Hello, welcome to Miniature Elves. My name's Stuart, and welcome to a little quick review. Now, I recently pre-ordered and picked up my Bulge British release, so the new book, the Starter Army cards, etc., etc., from Battlefield Hobbies a few weeks ago, and you've seen the reviews already on the channel. The final part of my pre-order was this little set you see in front of me, and this is part of the sort of the second wave of releases, so it wasn't going to be out at the same time, so I didn't have it straight away. There are other releases as well, some of the plastic boxes of the individual stuff that makes up the starter set, but this isn't included in the starter set. This is a separate kit. And I kind of added it to the cart at the time as a bit of a sort of impulse, really. I still don't know what kind of British Force fully I'm going to run yet, and I know I'll need to add to my starter set. And I know that just one set of these Jeeps probably won't be enough anyway, but I wanted to buy them, having recently painted the US Airborne version of the Jeeps. So they've arrived today, and I thought, you know what, I'll do a really quick unboxing and get a little short video out to those of you that are interested in it. So let's get the cellophane off and have a little look at what's inside. So it's a Jeep, Recce Troop and SAS section, so you can use them for either thing. There's 4 vehicles in there, and you'll see on the back you've got your pretty basic assembly instructions. I imagine these are exactly the same plastic kit that are already in the Airborne, US Airborne, etc., etc. But it will just be some of the extra little bits. But we'll have a see when we open it up in a second. Right, let's have a go for it. So here's the contents of the box. Now, you don't get cards anymore, and this is a thing with the newer sets, I believe. I think they said on recent interviews that you get so many cards now because of the sort of different uses that some kits can be used for. It was just getting a bit silly, and then they would be the case of would they be up to date if the stock was left in some shops for a while. So you don't get the cards with all of the boxes anymore. You do with the army starters and things, but I think with a lot of these smaller ones you don't. I'll discuss that in a moment. I do have the cards from the command set I bought, so we'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But let's have a little look at what you get. So you get 2 identical sprues. You can make 2 Jeeps from each, and we'll move one out of the way. You've got your crew in there as well. Now, this sprue is the same as what you get in the Airborne, American Airborne Jeeps as well. It's probably used in other places as well, so someone can tell me in the comments. And I had loads of fun with this kit. I've painted it recently for Airborne. There's actually a painting tutorial on the channel. Really cute little models go together super quickly. And when I built it, you could see that there's a lot of little extra bits that weren't covered in the instructions. So you've got slightly different bonnet versions. You have backs of the Jeeps with a fuel can and a spare wheel, and some without. And you've got these sort of extra fuel cans inside, and ammo boxes and entrenching tools and things like that. And the standard build just didn't show them. I think on my Airborne I added the odd tiny little bit just to make the 4 Jeeps slightly different, but left most of it off. And if we bring the box back over here, and excuse the glare, you can see what it's suggesting. So you've got your standard Jeep build there, very basic, and then it's got all the optional parts to go on it. So that's the smoother front of the bonnets rather than the ones with the little knobs on the front. And it's the plain back, so no spare wheel and fuel can, which was on the Airborne official instructions. And then the idea is you've got all these little bits that you can kind of stick all over the place and really make them stand out and look different, especially if they're going to be SAS and maybe been behind lines for a long time. And I think that's really cool. But the kit's really nice, really simple, as I said, and it's one of the good ones, definitely. And these are the British crew. So you've got 2 sculpts. You have a driver and you have a gunner to sit in the front. You can obviously add your machine gun to the front of the Jeep in this version. Now, these are dated 2022. I know they talked about new versions of Cyocast, like a harder, more fileable resin. And I'm not sure which these are. I'm not sure. So I've come across sort of 2 versions of Cyocast in the Battlefront kits that I've had. I've obviously not had as much as many other people. I found one in this kind of colour, which is a little bit softer, most of my Airborne or that. And then in a more of a bluer resin, which seems to be a lot cleaner, but still also rubbery. and most of my British bits are in that. So these are what looks like the slightly different colour, but this may be the harder resin, I'm not sure. But what I can say is that they're pretty clean, and there's very little in the way of mould lines and things to remove anyway, so that really shouldn't cause too much of an issue. There's a very slight mould line there, which will come off super easy with a blade anyway. So regardless of which version of Siocast this is, I can't see any issues with them anyway. Let's have a quick file test. So there's a very, very faint mould line on the top here. Does it file, or does it leave lots of little residue left over? You know what? That's not too bad. So maybe this is some of the newer stuff. I'm not quite sure without having samples of it all next to each other. That does seem to file slightly better, so definitely no worries. So if you're a real kind of anti-Siocast soft plastic kind of person, and I've not enjoyed some in my time from some manufacturers, this isn't going to be a problem on this kit, which I suppose is the most important thing when reviewing a kit. So no problems for me here. Now, to be clear, the cards don't come in the box, but I want to really briefly touch on what the unit is and what it's for. So your Bold British unit cards is where I got these from. Those rules are also in the Bold British book. And then the command cards are separate. They're not covered in the book. And that's where these 3 cards on the bottom come from as well. And if you sign up for Forces, the Forces Builder on the Flames of War website, you've got access to the rules here as well. Without buying those things, they're not all available as a printout. Someone made a comment on my review, is that the cards aren't available on there. If you print the actual unit entry or save it, you do have access to the stuff that's on the card, so you could play it without using the unit cards. But he's right, yeah, when you do your army list printout, it doesn't have all the information on it. But anyway, really briefly, I'm not going to go through all the stat lines and things, just wanted to really explain what was in the box. So you got your airborne Recce Jeep troop, which you can use them for, and then you've got this command card here, which allows you to build a airborne Recce squadron as well, which is a different way sort of building some Recce. And you've got an HQ of 2 Jeeps, and then you've got 2 to 4 Jeep airborne Recce troops, and then you can add Frost Mortar platoon as well. So it's just adding a way of adding some Jeeps to your airborne British airborne lists. And then for me, what's more exciting, I think, I may well use them for both in the future, but is the SAS Jeep section here as well. So that's its standard, but then you've got a couple of additional ways of adding to that using the command cards. So you've got armoured Jeeps, so a way of changing your Jeeps a little bit. And then you have, this is the most fun, which is the behind enemy lines. And it basically changes the way that the Jeeps work. And from the sort of the fluffy side of things is that they can, the way they appear on the table as an ambush in the enemy deployment areas, as if they've been on a mission, and they're returning to their lines. And as they're returning to their lines, they come across a battle or engagement, which means they're sort of off the table. So not super historical maybe to repeat over and over again, but also something that absolutely could and did happen. God knows how many times though, but I think it's a really fun thing, and I'm sure that it's the kind of thing that competitive players may well find some use out of, because it's tricksy. For me, I just like the idea of making up a really fun scenario at some point where that's built into it. And a final note, just before we go, those of you in the UK may well have recently watched the SAS Rogue Heroes, which is a BBC drama. There are lots of historical bits in there, but it's a really good fun watch, and I'll definitely recommend it if you haven't seen it already. I think it's currently like 8.2 on IMDb and 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is shows how good it is as entertainment. Us who like military history often can get a little bit moany about the wrong things, and I know there's a wrong tank in the final episode, but go and check it out if you haven't seen already. But it does sort of open up the interest in SAS and the long range desert group as well, to a certain extent. And I know this is before my time in Flames of War Gaming, but I know some of those rules were covered in version 3. I think someone's posted up a link to some stuff in a recent post in the Flames of War group. but it's well worth looking at. And I was already talking to Alid the other day. We're having a bit of a sort of a hobby evening and chat, and I was talking to him about how I could maybe convert the SAS rules and just use them in with mid-war for non-tournament games. It doesn't really matter. I can paint these jeeps up and desertify them and do some conversions and things. For non-competitive games, I can't see why you couldn't use these stats and things in the same way with mid-war British for the odd scenario. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please check out the other Flames of War videos on the channel if you haven't seen them already. Give the video a like if you've not hated it. Consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks very much. Take care, and I'll see you soon.